Testing 1, 2. All right, let's wait for. All right, what's up going on? We are back. So today I want to talk about confidence. So if you've never listened to me today, let's start it over. Hi guys, my name is Donnie Rouse, and you are listening to the podcast One Life. Today we're going to talk about confidence. Confidence is the key to you and all of your dreams. And there are 3 keys of confidence: deservingness, decisiveness, and let me get to that third one that I wrote down, and dreams. So I'll go into each of those, and I'll kind of, I'll share with you just how each one of these levers is standing between you and the dreams you have. And by explaining this to you, I'll pull examples from my own life, because this is actually one of the areas where I felt like I had struggled the most. But when people were on the outside looking at me, they thought, man, this guy is super confident. Man, he has everything going for him. He's doing X, Y, and Z. But in the inside, I wasn't feeling it. And I felt it at different points in my life, right? At different moments. And often on and off throughout the week. And it was because of these 3 keys that I'm about to explain to you right here. Because at any moment, when you disconnect from one of these keys, then you disconnect from your confidence. But when you are connected to all 3, man, you are a force to be reckoned with. So let's talk about number 1. Well, actually, let me explain all 3 of them to you right now. I'll tell you about them, and then I'll go into each single one of those. So the first is deservingness. If you don't have a perception for your life, then you are going to fall into the perceptions of others or your former self. Secondly is dreams. Like, what are your dreams? Like, what are the big things that are going to excite you and move forward? Because if you don't have dreams moving you forward, if you don't have something exciting pulling you, then you're just going to dwell on like all the troubles that are in your day. And guess what? Life has an endless well of troubles if that's where you want to put your focus. And the last one is decisiveness. You have to take decisive action, because with action, you get momentum, and momentum, with enough action, you will get the confidence to go towards whatever it is that you want to take. So let me tell you about my own life. So this way you can see yourself in my own experiences, and you can kind of see where I was stumbling and correct your own actions going forwards. This way you don't experience it any longer. And I want to kind of throw this caveat in. If for some reason that you are experiencing a lack of confidence, just have the awareness to notice what it is, and then ask which one of these 3 keys is it, and then work on improving that area. So let's talk about the first one. The first one is deservingness. Why is it that some people just are confident and other people lack it, even when they have every reason to be confident? The reason is that they don't integrate their successes. And I'd heard this from many coaches that I'd had in the past. You have to integrate your successes. And I was like, I'm just going to keep on going. I'm just going to keep on charging forward towards the desires I have. I'm going to I'm just going to conquer. So as a result, I would keep conquering these goals that I had, these ambitions. But when I would get there, I would feel empty because I wasn't allowing myself to integrate it. And what was happening was that my confidence was actually very hurt, right? I'm going through all these things, and all these things I should be extremely proud of. But then I was just focusing on what the negatives were. And here's the thing. We hold off on confidence because we think we have to experience the end goal in order to one day obtain that confidence, when the truth is confidence is in motion, right? Confidence is just taking that next step, being confident that you are going to be able to figure it out. To give you an example of this, I'll give you an example with the most recent creation of my espresso blend. So my espresso blend, I had been wanting to do an espresso blend of my own for literally since I started my coffee career. And in doing that, it's not just to say, oh, I want to create an espresso blend. Let me roast some coffee and use it as espresso, right? Because anyone could roast coffee, meaning anyone could take coffee, take it from green, turn it brown, and call it coffee. But that doesn't mean it's going to taste good. So I had spent nearly the last 20 plus years of my life just focusing on espresso. And as you can imagine, spending 25 years, almost a quarter of a century on a particular focus, you're going to learn some things. And so I was literally spent all that time focusing on that. But when people ask me, I would often feel like worried about what they would think about it, and I would have a hard time if I was coaching somebody on espresso, and I'd have a hard time speaking with confidence. I mean, I people probably saw that, but in my own mind, I felt shaky at times. Why is that? So I was I was just reviewing all of my like kind of going back over the history I had with coffee. And what I realized was that I was not integrating my wins, meaning I was not giving myself credit for all the successes I've had, all the determination. And it's been even in the last, year, let alone like the last 5 years, I've had seen a tremendous growth where I had thought that growth was once stalled and that I knew everything. But what I realized was that the more I sought knowledge, the deeper I was going, and the more there was to learn. So it was an ongoing process. But when I looked back at the days where I couldn't figure out, I was pulling espresso shots and shot was spraying all over the place, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me what was going on, and how frustrated I was with the most simple, concept of pulling a shot, and where I am now. I just never integrated it. And you may say, well, what the hell does espresso have to do with me, right? Donnie, I'm not even into espresso. I drink tea. What does it have to do with me? But let's go back even further. Let's go back to your childhood. Let's go back to middle school or high school, right? Some of the hardest times of your life, at least they were for me. When I was in high school, in middle school, even in elementary school, I used to get bullied. People always used to pick fights with me. And I think it was because I was just very soft-hearted and kind. And as a result, people just went to me. There was a time where I would definitely be one to fight, especially in elementary school, because I was taking, I was taking a Korean martial art form. So I just wanted to practice. So if someone would start a fight with me, I was ready to dive in there, but there was no punching or anything else, just kind of putting into submission. But it seemed to be like this theme that people always would pick on me, right? And I remember going to school, on the bus, for example, and someone saying they wanted to beat me up and being terrified, terrified of being on the bus and then having to walk home because I was afraid I was going to get beat up. But nevertheless, I got on that bus. I took it home from school. And then I walked home. There were times where people tried picking a fight with me. Sometimes I ran, other times just nothing materialized. So when I look back on, to give you just a different example, when I look back on those experiences that I had, man, that was scary, right? But I got through it. And so looking at that, then looking at a bad shot of coffee or whatever it is you're facing, it almost seems like nothing because you've overcome so much. So to feel confident, you have to integrate your wins. Now, if you think of something you're having a struggle with, think of some of the things, how you would advance and where you started off from. Has there been progress? Which leads me into, let's go into number 2 now. Now we're going to talk about dreams. What are your dreams? If you're not being led by a vision of future, you're being led by one of the past. Only one of them is going to make you feel more confident, feel more excited, and more vital towards life. Going back to the espresso example, I might as well just keep it on the theme of espresso because it makes sense for me and I want to keep it and make it easy for you. So going back to the theme of espresso. So I had this dream about making a great espresso blend for literally my entire professional coffee career. And I would make attempts of my own and I would never, they wouldn't come out right or wasn't what I wanted. And then I would get just really, really down on myself, right? And then I was just thinking I was stuck in what was. I was stuck thinking man, it's never going to change, right? So my my vision for the future was very fixed on the present moment. It was not looking towards something bigger as to what could be. But here's the thing that happened, and it's kind of goes into action. But then I decided that I was going to make this happen. I was going to make an authentic Italian espresso that was fresh and made amazing shots with amazing crema, and I was going to make all the world happy. But I'm joking, but I'm half serious. Like, I thought about this, and I just, if anything, I dreamt of like the dream of just sipping and enjoying my own espresso, right? The one that I roasted, and just having so much pleasure from that. And as a result of that, it pushed me forward to just keep on going. And whereas if I wanted to stay, say a few years ago, where I was making espresso and I just wasn't happy with it, if I wanted to stay in that space, I would not have taken the steps that I had taken. And let's think about your own life. Like, where is it that, what are you being led by? Maybe it's your physical health. Like, what is it, the vision that is driving you? And is it one where that is compelling enough, that excites you, that when you think about it, it makes you want to take action? Or is it pretty much just stagnant, or not even stagnant? Maybe you have a negative self-image or future that you're looking at, and as a result, it's pulling you backwards. Be aware of it. So this way you could actually change it by asking yourself a different question. What is it that I want? If I could wish for anything in life, what would I wish for the area of my business, my health, my finances? And the idea of asking what you would wish for, because it gives you beyond like the suspend your disbelief that something else is possible. And as a result of that, then you can start to get excited and think of something that's beyond what your present day is. And then let's go to the last part, decisiveness. This is probably where I had felt the most momentum, was being decisive. Like, going back to what I said, when I was feeling really shitty about that espresso, it's because I wasn't taking big action. I was taking small action steps, and I'd get a bean, I'd try roasting it slightly different, but then I wouldn't do a whole lot, right? I would taste it, I'm like, oh, it's not working. And there wasn't a big vision for it until one day I decided. One day I decided I was going to contact the number one espresso consultant in the world, and I was going to do it within that year. It was like last year. I gave myself 1 year to have that espresso done. So I did everything I could. I called, like I was asking ChatGPT who were the top ones. I spoke to all my friends in Italy, and I was doing the research. And then I got connected with a person, and I said, all right, listen, I want to get on your calendar. And they're like, oh, well, there's no availability in the calendar. He's traveling around the world for, the entire year. There's no availability. It's like, I won't take that as a no. I need to get on his calendar. There has got to be a time. I'm flexible. I'm willing to wait however long it takes, as long it is done by April 2025. And they said, okay, all right, well, there might be some time in, later in December. And then December got pushed back. And then it got pushed back again. And then it got pushed back again. And then I was like, what the frig, man? I'm like, give me a time. It was Italian. I'm Italian, so I'm allowed to say this. But working with different cultures, like especially in a different country, is very, very challenging. Because, yeah, Italians, I feel like a lot of Italians don't really like to commit to hard schedules. And so I finally got him to commit to being in Italy, because he had to go renew his passport, and it was going to take 3 weeks. So there was he didn't have a choice. He was going to be stuck in Italy. So I went there, I did the training, and then I came back. Right. And just to give you kind of in terms of action, like that was a big action, right? And it was a big expense, right? So sometimes you got to put your money where your mouth is, because your money is simply energy. And it's energy that by putting it in a direction, you're putting it in motion. You're saying, this is important to me. This is the direction I'm going to move. So I went there, I came back, and all of a sudden I tasted the espresso that I made while I was in Italy. And I was like, all right, now I got to freaking replicate it while I'm here. Like, how do I do that, right? It's a different roasting environment. I need help. And I contacted this consultant. I'm like, I need a call, so this way we can do a virtual session. No availability. I'm like, how do you train someone and then literally just drop him in and say, "Hey, okay, figure it out." Right? It's not how I would want to do, and that's how I felt. Maybe he had all the obligations, but if I didn't have the time, then I wouldn't have taken someone on in the first place. Or if I did, I would make sure I would follow through. So now I'm here, and I want to figure it out. And now I've got to I got to come up with ways of doing it. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of flounder. So I joined a new roasting collective where I could roast on the type of equipment I needed in order to do espresso. And then what was the next big decision I had to make, right? I was going to go to that place anyways because I needed to do productions for my markets. So what was the next step for me? Well, the next step was like buying inventory, right? I needed to get new inventory because I only had a certain amount of coffees left that I was going to play with this for the espresso blend. And if I was really going to commit to it, I needed to pony up and buy a lot more coffee. Otherwise, just in the experimentation, I was going to, I'd have a couple roasts and then that would be it. But in order to commit to that, it was going to require a lot more money, right? Because I had to buy a lot more coffee at a time when the coffee price was at its peak. But I said, you know what? Well, whatever it is what it is. I know what my result is, and even if I have to throw out every freaking pound I roast, I am going to come up with that espresso. So I bought the coffee, and I came here. I roasted it the first time, and the first time I did roast, I was just playing with a single origin. And it didn't come out as planned. I wasn't ready. It was new equipment, right? Again, all these things are all new actions I had to take. If you're following, I'm in a new roasting facility. If you know anything about coffee roasting, a new machine is like walking for the first time, right? Because it's like driving an automatic car and then someone saying, "Here, drive stick," and you're like, "What stick? What do you mean? I only know this one lever that I pulled down and up. Now I have to move it in different directions." Essentially, it is that. And so I had to learn a new roasting machine for like the 5th time in my coffee roasting career. And I'm like, damn. But I kept moving forward. I kept challenging myself to grow. I had the dream of making that Italian espresso, and I just kept taking the action. As a result of taking that action, and again, I wasn't always confident in the action that I was taking, but I knew that I was smart enough and that I could ask for help. So I had this, I'm sorry, I'm going extra long on this, on the action part, because I think it's actually probably one of the most important aspects of the 3 keys, because when you take enough action, you build the confidence. So back to the coffee. So I was roasting, and as I was getting more roast under my belt, I started to get more confident. And not only that, I had contacted another consultant I'd worked with because I know I had access to him as here. Just after every roasting session, I would sit with him and I would review the roast and make a plan on how to achieve the optimal time in the 3 different phases of the roasting process so I could get more flavor, right? And things came really good. And I was always aiming. I wasn't happy with what it was. Then it got kind of circled all the way back around to the awareness part, right? I wasn't integrating my wins. And I was like, but I gave it to a bunch of people. I pulled the shots. I liked the shots. And so it came full circle. But the long story short, I'm still taking the action, right? I'm about to change the espresso blend slightly because I'm trying to achieve a certain profile. But the only difference between now and even like a couple weeks ago, because last week I had an amazing week, and it was because every single one of these keys that I mentioned here was in place. And as a result of it being in place, it brought peace to me. It brought confidence and faith that where I was going was the right direction, that I would get there. Rewind before that, and then I just felt like I was just kind of like there was no certainty, and as a result of not having certainty. How do you move forward when there's no certainty? You don't. If you do, it's small steps and you're impairing your growth, right? You take the small steps forward, and then you see these other people like bolting past you, and you're like, what's going on? They don't even have the skills I have. But when you have the confidence, when you've decided that you are deserving of it, when you are connecting to your dreams, and when you are taking decisive action, you are unstoppable. So, and it's not ending. So I'm still on this journey. And to kind of close it up, even with like the cold Roman espresso. If you guys know me from my coffee career, then you know that I create a bottle of espresso. That's in a different journey, and I'm not going to go too much into that. But for the first time in nearly, not going to go too much into that. But for the first time in nearly all of my career, I was able, this past week, I was looking out and I was seeing a grand vision for my life. And this is the stuff like that I proud myself on and constantly speaking of, because it would come in like, in spurts of inspiration. And I wanted you to know that that's okay. And that it is a challenge to always, you have to stay focused. You always have to keep where you want to go in mind. Right? It's a challenge for me. And this is the area that I'm always putting focus in, right? I'm on here sharing my lessons with you. But in no way, shape, or form does it mean that it's always that I'm not struggling or that I don't have challenges. The difference is, not to say the difference between me and you, but the difference in the mindset is that I get up and I keep on going. So that is what I want you guys to. So let's go back to those 3 keys, and I'll explain them once more. So this way, we make sure I want to make sure that you have an understanding of these 3 keys and how to move those levers in your life. Because everything you want, again, depends on these 3. So the first one is deservingness. Like, are you integrating the wins that you have? If you're not integrating your wins, then you are focusing probably on the opposite, your losses. And you're focusing on an image of yourself that's no longer serving you. By focusing on the wins, by seeing the steps we have taken and how they're moving us forward, we get confidence. Number 2, their dreams. Like, what are you being pulled by? You're either being pulled forward or you're being pulled backwards. If you think you're staying stagnant in the center, you're incorrect. Because if you're not growing, then you are dying, right? Anything grows or dies. And I don't want to use, dying is a pretty strong word, and I don't want to use that. But if that's what it's going to take to give you the emotional intensity, say, hey, you know what? I got to start thinking about what I really want versus like the thing I don't want. Like, what is it that you want? And just for a second, like, just ask yourself, like, how does it feel when you get excited about something and you are being pulled by a vision of something bigger? How do you feel? I already know how you feel. You feel ecstatic. You get excited. Right? That's why it's so important to have like milestones to work towards, not just the vision at the end, because the milestones help you to celebrate and keep the momentum. It's one of the reasons why I travel all the time, right? I do it so this way it gets me out. So this way I don't put off living life for a different time, but also it is one of my desires to live and travel all around the world and to have the freedom to travel whenever I want. But I'm not going to put it off. And by having these small wins, not only does it keep me plugged into that dream, but it also just keeps me excited to move forward with all the endeavors I have in life. And then lastly, decisiveness. Like, what kind of action are you taking? Are you taking big action, small action? And I'm not going to try to say what action is good or bad, because at different points in my life, big action was what was needed. Sometimes small action was what got me there, right? Small action just to take the step, right? To start this podcast, for example. Small steps could also lead to massive progress. So I don't want to start to try to judge and say, like, how big of an action you have to take, because that could be overwhelming, right? Because then you're constantly judging yourself on the action you took, thinking like, well, was this big? Was this big? And when I say you, I mean me. This is what I did. I would like judge myself, and I'd be like, well, was that big enough? And it was just like this loop, and then I started spinning out in my brain again, right? And it's exhausting. It's so exhausting. So big or small, just take an action. Let's bring it down and make it concise. And just take an action in the direction of where you want to end up, and just keep taking small actions. Because actions that you keep taking, what you're really doing is you're just stepping into courage. Confidence, all this stuff is really stepping into your courage. Courage to dream bigger. Courage to realize your gains and that you're growing. Courage to put yourself in new and unfamiliar situations to keep moving forward. So with decisiveness actions, action alone will give you the confidence. So I hope this helps you in some way. If you were feeling, like that you were confident before, but it all seems lost, just look at the 3 here. Tell me, which one are you not counting your wins, or you're counting your losses instead, or the things that are not going right? Are you focusing on your current situation rather than where you want to go, and that's making you feel bad? Or are you doing the same thing over and over and over and over and expecting a different result versus taking some bigger action, feeling a little bit uncomfortable, knowing that you've overcome many big things that were far greater than what you're afraid of now in the past, and then moving forward, what is it? Which one of these levers do you need to tweak? Do you need to? Sometimes it's going to be more than one, but which one of these levers do you need to kind of twist so this way it opens up that door, and you can feel the confidence that is in you. It is in you. I promise you. It is in you, because every single one of you listening to this has a win, has wins, has taken massive action, and has had a bigger vision for your life. So remember that, and remember that life is whatever you make of it. I hope it's one that you enjoy, one that you're passionate about, one that makes a difference. Because in the end, as I always end each podcast with saying, you only get one life. So before I go into that, if you like this, please share this with somebody whom you feel like can benefit from. Hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions or comments, you could send them to me via my website at donnyraus.com, DONNYRAUS.com. Okay, that is it. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember, you only get one life. Live fully, live passionately, and most of all, live now. God bless you guys.